Hey there everyone, AJ back again for the Mighty Gluestick channel. I make videos about Dungeons & Dragons lore full-time and have a collection of hundreds of monster ecology and fantasy world history videos on my channel. If you like what I do, please consider becoming a member of the channel by clicking the join button down below or backing me on Patreon, where you get access to all the scripts I write for these vids and of course advance access to any videos that I produce and have not released yet to everybody else. Subscribing to me here, as I upload at least twice a week, is kind of important as well. There's about 100,000 of you watching on a regular basis, and about half of that is subscribed, so it would be really nice if you're watching these on a regular basis and subscribe to me, please. It really does help out. Bit of a different video for you today. I have spent a lot of time over the last few days researching magic history, wizards, libraries of the Forgotten Realms, and on a side note, the wonderful art of bookbinding. And it occurred to me to ask just how many people really know what a spellbook looks like in the Forgotten Realms, because while some wizards do make their own, the majority of them purchase a spellbook as they begin their training, and when your group of adventurers finds a spellbook, there's always the question of what's inside it. And when your wizard gets into strife, falling into pools of water, acid, fire and so on, just how sturdy is a spellbook? Well, today it is time to answer these questions in some detail as we explore the ecology of the travelling spellbook, the Arcane Nebula, the Horizon, and the study or standard, or as I call it, the research spellbook. And if you didn't know what the difference was before, by the end of this video you will be an expert. The travelling spellbook a wizard carries with them is purchased later, several years into their studies, and looks similar to a standard spellbook, though it will be bolstered with further protection in the form of an extra layer of leather, which can fully enclose the book and be strapped close, with some option to further protect the book with waxed linen to provide even more impermeability to moisture, acid, and whatever else may happen. It is what is inside the book, written on the pages, which most separates the travelling spellbook, though, as it contains 25 to 50 leaves, so double-sided pages, which are inscribed with a distilled copy of one or more of the wizard's standard spellbooks that are safely stored elsewhere, lacking the detailed notes and research that fills the pages on those books. Travelling spellbooks usually contain 1/4 of the number of spells that would fill a standard spellbook, and invariably there will be many blank pages in the book that the wizard starts out with on the road, but by the time they return from their travels, the pages will be filled with additional notes, translations, references, maps, additional formulae, and things they've added in the course of their activities, including if they've found any extra spells or leads to where to find more. A mage completing their apprenticeship generally has one or possibly two spellbooks. A book of first level spells will certainly be possessed, and cantrip notes may be included as well. These will be the spells that are available to all the apprentices under the wizards of that particular Academy of Learning, so this is essentially their school book. After becoming mages in their own right, the study continues of course, but it's up to the mage which areas they wish to study from what knowledge is available to them. Thus, the next standard spellbook they start with will fill the pages, will contain up to 24 spells of 1st to 3rd level, or 16 spells of 4th to 6th level, or up to 8 spells of 7th to 9th level. These research spellbooks can include spells that they don't even know how to cast yet. The travelling books contain spells they consider the most useful and which they have the most confidence in casting. Also those spells for which they have the ready supply of components needed in their use. It's no point having a spell written down if you can't actually cast it. A travelling spellbook can contain either 6 spells of 1st to 2nd and or 3rd level, 4th spells of 4th, 5th and 6th level, or 2 spells of 7th, 8th and or 9th level. Apprentice spellbooks will be reasonably priced from reputable sources with a good reputation for quality, but would rarely cost more than 250 gold pieces. A mage's spellbooks, once they've graduated, are considerably more expensive, as these are the tools of their trade, so a standard spellbook would cost 1,000 gold pieces just for the physical book, plus another 100 gold pieces per level of each spell contained on its pages, including each cantrip inscribed there. The first spellbook acquired after the end of the apprenticeship is traditionally financed by the mage's former master, a graduation gift, and there's some pride involved that is reflected in the quality of this tome. Books prepared later in a mage's career are not supplied by the master, but are composed by the character as part of their training when rising to a higher level of experience. This composition will take from 4 to 7 weeks of detailed scribing for each new spell in the standard book. The book is composed during and after the time when other training exercises are taking place. Taking note of the sourcebook titled Magic of Faerun, as well as the Player's Handbook for 3.5 edition, as well as Aurora's Whole Realms Catalogue, a fantastic book, and the Pages of the Mages, which included a lot of notes from Ed Greenwood himself, we get a very clear idea of not only exactly what the books are made from, but how they're measured and their cost, but also where they are made and what sort of items a merchant might carry from one location to another across the continent in the supply of specialist bookbinders. We also learn that mages refer to the size of a spell book and a measurement of 3.5 inches or 8.8 centimeters that they call a hand, which is the exact size of the delicate hand of the arcane scholar Alaric. I don't know why. A standard research spellbook is approximately 16 inches in height, 12 inches wide, and 6 inches thick. The weight of the standard book of medium size is 15 pounds or approximately 40 centimeters in height, 30 centimeters wide, 15 centimeters thick, and weighing about 6.8 kilograms. So it's a hefty tome. The cover of a standard book is typically Southwood, covered with leather, any leather really, but there is some preference among wizards for snake or drake, or very rarely dragon hide, inlaid with metal so as to provide some extra durability and a means to close and secure the book. Vellum pages are sewn together and secured to a fine supple leather spine backing. Vellum, of course, is a type of soft leather page. Pages are secured additionally by fine leather front and back pieces. It's also usual for a tome to have vellum stubs at intervals for insertion of additional pages. Essentially, they stitch them onto those leather stubs, usually where research notes are included, never additional spells. A travelling spellbook is approximately 12 inches tall, 6 inches wide and 1 inch thick, though there is also popularity for a 9 by 9 inch book of the same thickness. That is 30 centimeters tall, 15 centimeters wide and 2.5 centimeters thick, or the squarer version, which is 23 by 23 centimeters for that variety. The weight of each book is approximately 3 pounds or 1.36 kilograms, so it's a pocket variety. Your average traveller's backpack will comfortably fit 5 of these such books. Twice as many can fit into a large sack. The cover of a travelling spellbook is Southwood, over which a strong, supple animal leather layer is added, such as that from a giant cobra. That's one of the most popular things. The hand-sewn leaves of parchment are carefully secured to a fine leather backing and glued to the spine. The whole is further secured in front and back pieces of vellum, and a small lock or leather ties are typically used to secure the whole. The quality of the lock depends on the smith and the complexity, strength and reliability of it. The pages are very thin and fragile, so care must be taken to protect the book when it's out in the wilds in heavy use. A typical travelling spell book costs about 500 gold pieces for materials. The cost of each spell contained within is still 100 gold pieces per level of the spell per spell, of course. All travelling spellbooks must be fabricated by the mage or otherwise discovered as treasures by other mages or their associates. The standard spell research books are further defined. An horizon is a jumble of spells of varying levels, sometimes interspersed with spell research, notes or other information, or even spells usable by other classes that are recorded for further study. An Arcane Nebula is an illusionist's workbook of travelling spellbook, as opposed to the more complete spell tomes kept in secret by almost all spellcasters. Most Arcane Nebulas are nondescript, although illusionists in the realms have shown a talent for making theirs look like something else, such as a musical instrument or a game board or a belt made of linked metal plates and so on. So an horizon is the study spellbook of a wizard, and an Arcane Nebula refers to not only their workbook and study book, but also their travelling spellbooks. Southwood, which you've heard me mention, is unique to the Forgotten Realms and worthy of some explanation. South trees have a grey bark and olive green leaves. The leaves of the tree are long, soft and fluffy, but with a small spike at the end. Their growth is really peculiar. The branches grow almost horizontally across, extending out for a distance and then changing angle or even doubling back. So they have this sort of zigzag look to them, or a corkscrewing motion. They're quite bizarre. A few South trees growing close together would become intertwined with one another and become impossibly tangled, thus forming an impenetrable screen or wall, barring passage to any who can't fly overhead or crawl through the lowest branches. South trees grow around the edges of the Shah, in the forests of Chondath, and the deeper into the shining south. The forests of Amtar was composed mostly of Southwood. The Gnolwatch Mountains and Kerner mountain ranges were dotted with Southwood as well. The wood of the South tree, or Southwood, it's a Soth is a corruption of the word south, so these are south trees. Particularly hard and durable, making it difficult to carve without very fine tools. So it's essentially Forgotten Realms hardwood. Even thin sheets of Southwood remain hard for decades, making it popular for use in book covers, but also prized in the crafting of shields, and as it never flies apart or shatters, only cracking under a devastating blow. Will not catch fire if soaked in water prior to a battle either. Obviously, the Southwood growing in the south, as well as a lot of the giant snake leather that can only be sourced regularly from there. It has a lot of wagons travelling the coast of Kalimshan and the Lake of Steam, and the trade of exotic hides from the jungles of Chult. And there's a lot of traffic of supplies vital to the mages along the Sword Coast and plying the waters of the Inner Sea, particularly going up the Sword Coast. And that's why between Arm and Baldur's Gate you have Candlekeep, which is one of the foremost bookbinding and wizard book producing places in the entirety of Faerun. Obviously, and of course Thay has a heavy supply of them going across the Sea of Fallen Stars. Obviously, the Southwood is not the cheapest wood, since it has so many uses, and even the most basic spellbook of simple construction that includes it has, with only 25 leaves of parchment, will cost around 50 gold coins. The best off the merchant's shelf without any additional ornamentation or excess will set a mage back 1,000 gold coins. And from there, well, it just gets more and more ostentatious. There are many magnificent works of bookbinders' art. The topic of much discussion among scholars and mages everywhere, the quality of books. The crafting of spellbooks is a bit of a mystical art in and of itself, kind of like Harry Potter's wands, where true masters of it are having almost as much renown as the wizards who use their wares. It's a bit similar to the art of making the finest swords. The ancient arts of Karatur and their folded steel blades are legendary, and the prestige of their sword masters is very high indeed. There are two other important elements in the ecology of the spellbook. One is the inks used by mages to inscribe their spells and notes. Inks can be mass-produced and obtained in nearly any city quite easily. There's exotic animals that provide inks for sure, but mages are a bit more particular about the quality of the inks that they use, and as the information they put into their books must last as long as the book itself, and of course mages can live for centuries, and so ink must remain vibrant and crisp, not fading away over time as the cheaper inks are prone to do. The most common form of ink used in Faerun for writing on parchment and vellum is made from the branches of hawthorn trees, cut in the spring and left to dry. Then the bark is pounded from the branches and soaked in water for 8 days. The water is boiled until it thickens down and turns into this black goop. Wine is then added during the boiling. The ink is poured into special bags and then hung in the sun, and once dry the mixture is mixed with wine and iron salt over a fire to make the final fixed ink. Inks, rather than dyes, are vital to writing text in spellbooks because the pigments in the ink link together in crystalline structures that are far easier to receive and hold enchantments. On that note, we come to the second most important part, the sigils of the mages. Each mage in the realms has their own personal rune or symbol, which is used both to identify their own work and to protect their items, as with explosive runes. The sigil is unique for each active mage in the realms and remains with that particular caster until their death. A wizard chooses a sigil sometime before reaching 4th level typically. Long-lived wizards sometimes go through a number of sigils, but most stay with the first one that they choose. A mage can make a new one at 10th level and 5th level, 5 levels thereafter, and so on. The inherent nature of the sigils themselves prevents accidentally copying another living wizard sigil. You'll know when you've found a symbol that nobody's used before. It basically just feels right. Accidentally copying a dead wizard sigil is another matter, because some liches have their own ideas about protecting their symbols. Obviously, they persist after their death. No two mages have identical symbols. Each is readily identifiable by its owner. Mage sigils have been reproduced by others to disseminate truthful information with the mage's permission, but a heavy divine curse is invoked against those who seek to use the sigils of others to their own ends, either with intent of counterfeiting, fraud, or mischief making. This curse is said to come from the goddess Mystra herself and causes debilitating weakness, both mental and physical, that may endure for years, so permanent reduction in their attributes, and an immediate effect of badly confusing the mind of the fraudulent mage, so it's a feeble mind effect as well. The curse affects any and all who attempt to use the sigil of another mage for their own ends. The effects of the curse can be quite erratic. Some victims even display marks on their person to identify their crime for all who can see them. Please hit the like button if you made it this far. Subscribe if you like what I do. Check out my Patreon for some exclusive content, all the full scripts for these videos. Definitely go and check out my fellow sages of the Forgotten Realms and other worlds beyond. Dungeon Dad, Ambassador Rex, Jordan. Buy some merchandise, wear your geek with pride, and as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.